Today's action movies have some of the most outrageous, over-the-top stunts ever put to film. But what usually happens behind the scenes is a well-choreographed dance involving safety, special effects, trained stuntmen, and lots of planning. But it wasn't always like this. In the early days of film, directors, actors, and studios had to get creative to awe audiences on the big screen, and safety would often fall to the wayside. But as time went on, the industry evolved to be safer, even though stunts became larger and more intense. In this video, we're going to take a look back at the evolution of film stunts. But before we dive in, our analytics show that most of you watching haven't subscribed to FilmStack yet. So make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out on more videos like this. It's easy and free and helps the channel out a lot. So with that out of the way, cue the intro. The practice of doing stunts for an audience can be dated back to the days where the primary form of theater was live theater. But other than ropes used to imitate flight or carefully choreographed fights on stage, there wasn't a huge variety of things you could do in front of a live audience. But when motion pictures came onto the scene, the possibilities of what could be done grew immensely, even though a lot of the techniques used on the stage were translated for the movies. With stunts generating more and more of the attention and hype, directors and producers had to find bigger and better ways to entice the audience into giving up their precious dollars. And as these stunts became more over the top, the dangers involved also grew. But that wasn't a huge problem, because in the early days of film, if a risky stunt was needed for a scene, the producers would just hire anyone brave enough or crazy enough willing to do it. If you needed someone to walk on a steel beam on top of a skyscraper, someone out there would do it for a price. There was no such thing as a professional stuntman. The first picture to actually use a dedicated stunt performer is highly debated, but it happened somewhere between the years 1903 and 1910. And from the 1910s onwards, many directors used professional cowboys in their films when riding a horse was required. Professional cowboys knew how to ride a horse in a way that looked right on screen. They were often used as extras during this time because Western-based movies had many extras written into the screenplay. But even though we had people performing stunts on camera and professional cowboys filling in when riding horses was required, there was still no such thing as a professional stuntman. At least not until actors like Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and Keystone Cops came onto the scene and grew in massive popularity during the 1920s. But the word professional is used very loosely here, because much like their circus-based predecessors, these actors/stuntmen were not specifically trained to perform stunts, but instead learned through trial and error. And I can imagine the error part being very painful. The majority of stunts in early films were part of the slapstick comedy genre, and with movies being silent, meaning there was no speaking, it was often difficult for the story to carry the movie all the way through. So the visuals had to tell the story and fill the time, but also stay interesting. That is why a lot of early slapstick kept trying to raise the bar for what kind of stunts could be performed. But as time went on, movies evolved from being driven by stunts and spectacles to being driven by story. You no longer needed stunt after stunt or gag after gag to keep the audience interested or laughing. The story could carry the weight for the entire runtime. Nowadays, most movies involving action and stunts use the story to drive the stunts and not the other way around. But don't get me wrong, there were and still are a lot of exceptions to this, where the story was modified to fit certain stunts in. Think the Fast and Furious series or something like Mission Impossible. But okay, so we're now in an era where the written story or dialogue can carry a movie. During this era, we started seeing more and more celebrities becoming household names and actually being able to bring audiences to a theater. As these celebrities became big deals and big money makers, studios didn't want to risk having them injured. So how do they go about solving this? Enter the stunt double. Stunt doubles have become commonplace in movies, but the craft of being a stunt double or stuntman wasn't as developed during the earlier times as it is today. So the people who were doing this were basically people tough enough, or again, crazy enough to do these stunts. From driving and oftentimes crashing cars at fast speeds to being dragged behind or falling off a horse in westerns, stunt doubles were constantly being thrown, no pun intended, into dangerous situations to protect the main actor or actress. As time went on, the stunt craft didn't change much. Yes, safety became a bigger and bigger concern, and yes, more techniques were developed to increase the variety of what could be done while also keeping things safe. Some actors that would appear regularly in major blockbusters even had dedicated stunt doubles, people like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone. In some scenes that were usually shot wider, you could use anyone who slightly resembled your main actor, but for certain shots, a dedicated stunt double was required. These dedicated stunt doubles were often similar in stature, build, and overall appearance as the main actor. This was all done to protect actors from getting hurt and not being able to continue in the role, which could cause massive and expensive delays to the overall production of a movie. But this wasn't the case for everyone. Throughout the 80s and 90s, actors like Jackie Chan and Tom Cruise began experimenting with stunts and doing their own, even though they were the star of the movie. Jackie Chan got injured multiple times, breaking multiple bones throughout the years while playing the leading role for various films. Now, that's some major dedication. But the next biggest innovation that would change the stunt industry forever was the introduction and adoption of CGI throughout the 90s and 2000s. CGI changed the game. The possibilities of what could be put on screen became endless. You were no longer bound by the physical world, but could now put anything on screen that could be imagined. Look at movies like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man or Avatar. These movies use CGI for a lot of their stunts and spectacles. When Spider-Man is swinging, it's not even a real person. It's all CGI and it looks so good. But even though CGI can be used to put anything on screen, it doesn't mean that it always looks right. A perfect example of this is the train fight scene in Black Panther. There is no weight to it. The movement doesn't seem real, and the entire scene looks more like a PS2 cutscene than it does a live-action movie. But many stunt professionals believe that modern CGI, if used correctly, will reduce the stunt industry to a mere shadow of its former self. But I wouldn't be so sure. Even though CGI is super powerful, it doesn't always make sense financially. Sure, as time goes on, it will get less and less expensive, but in today's environment, it's still pretty costly to get things done with it, and there's always the risk of it looking a bit off. So sometimes it's just better to do the stunts practically. But there's more to the whole story. There has been a lot of backlash from certain professionals about the use of CGI for stunts, to the point that a new genre of quote-unquote real movies has began to surface that are marketed on the basis that the scenes are real and that no CGI has been used to create the final production. But there's also a middle ground between the two. There are actors like Tom Cruise who continuously insist on doing their own stunts to create these amazing, nerve-wracking spectacles with just minor CGI enhancements for them. For example, the Halo jump from Mission Impossible Fallout, where he jumps from a plane from 25,000 feet through a lightning storm. Yes, Tom Cruise did actually do this Halo jump. What we see on screen is actually Tom Cruise jumping out of an airplane along with the cameraman. Which, the more I think about it, I'm starting to realize the cameraman is a bit more badass than Tom Cruise in that situation. But in that scene, the thunderstorm was added in post. This allows scenes to stay grounded yet still achieve what the director intended. The stunt industry has evolved an amazing amount since the beginning of film. From getting any random person off the street willing to do something insane, to now having entire schools dedicated to training and certifying potential stuntmen and stunt doubles, being a stuntman has never been more of a career option than it is now. I'm also happy to see that there are still many directors and actors that respect the craft enough to put their bones and possibly lives on the line doing what they love and entertaining us, keeping films grounded in reality yet still giving us a wonderful experience. Will CGI eliminate stunts in the future? I don't think so, but I'd love to hear what you think down below in the comments. Where will the stunt industry go from here? We'll just have to see. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching and learning from this video as much as I enjoyed making it. We release videos about the film industry and movies regularly and would love to take you along for the ride, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. If you like this video, hit that like button, we really appreciate it and it helps the channel out a lot. But until next time, have a good one.